Let's talk about a bill that we've been following in Salem. It's the one involving taxpayers footing the bill for out-of-state employees to travel back here for meetings. This all took off during the pandemic when remote work exploded. There are now hundreds of state employees who work far away from Oregon, places like New York City. The financial impact of the state paying for them to come back is not huge. It's roughly $30,000 as far as we can tell. But it is taxpayer money that's paying for that. And that doesn't sit well with many of you or with state lawmakers either. A bill was introduced about a month ago by the Republican leader in the state Senate, Senator Tim Knopp of Bend. Here's what he told us that day.
And it's also not fair because employees who have to commute inside of Oregon most times do not get reimbursed by the state for that travel. And so we have essentially what's an inequity of rank and file employees not being reimbursed, while we have higher paid management employees that are making up to $200,000 a year are basically living in income tax-free states and still working for the state, but the taxpayer is footing the bill for the travel, and I just don't think it's right.
There is bipartisan support in the legislature for this, and Knopp has called the session's most bipartisan bill even. Well, this week it came up for a vote on the full Senate floor, and it was unanimously approved. But it's worth noting, the bill has been watered down from its original form. At first, it called for a blanket ban on the state paying for any travel costs for employees coming back to Oregon. But the powerful public employee union, SEIU 503, they did not like that. Here's their leader, Melissa Unger, at the bill's first public hearing.
Finally, I think that it was kind of mentioned, we're not really convinced this is a problem. We don't know how much money have we spent on out-of-state travel. Has it been significant? Because I will tell you, our frontline workers can tell you lots of ways that the state could use their money better. And I am not sure that the money that we've spent on out-of-state travel is actually a huge problem. Do I think that there's headlines about it? I know that there's headlines about it. We read them, we got responses, and I agree. Some of our members do not think that this is a good idea. And I'm not saying it's a great idea, but we do think that there's real problems in state government. I've spent the last week with our frontline state workers, and they are in crisis.
Love that pivot at the end. This is not a big problem. You want to know a big problem? I'll tell you a big problem. Anyway, so lawmakers changed the bill so that it was more to the union's liking. So now, if someone lives within 60 miles of the Oregon border, Oregon could still pay for their travel back to meetings. But anyone living beyond 60 miles from the state line will have to pay their own way unless a collective bargaining agreement says otherwise, or if, quote, essential requirements of the position make it necessary for an employee to telecommute from outside the state. Whatever that means. I got to say, I read this 4 times and then I talked it out with producer Colton, and it still made no sense to me. Let's read it together one more time. Essential requirement of the position makes it necessary for an employee to telecommute from outside the state. Yeah. So best as I can tell, this means if your job is lobbying the Idaho legislature or maybe Congress in D.C., you pretty much need to be there. And if we have a meeting back here in Oregon that we require you to attend, then yeah, okay, we'll pay. I'd be amazed if that affected more than 3 people. But there it is. It's in the bill that the legislature is going to pass. That is what gets written into our law, folks. I wanted to point that out because it seems ridiculously specific. But it's another demonstration of the tremendous power of the public employee union. Now, that should make you very happy if you're a public worker. SEIU pours a lot of money into political races to help people get elected, and even outside that money, it's really good at mobilizing members to vote for their preferred candidate, and it's really good at protecting public employees. So politicians do not relish the idea of making them mad. Anyway, the revised bill is through the Senate, and yesterday it had its first reading in the House, where there is also bipartisan support to get it passed. We'll keep you posted on its future adventures.